In celebration of Starrcade, the legendary WCW pay-per-view event, the NWA pay-per-view event, the Jim Crockett Promotion pay-per-view event, and WWE turning into a live house show event that isn't barely aired on television or pay-per-view or network, because reasons, I'm not even going to go into that. Since Starrcade was, at the time of this recording, yesterday, I decided to watch a match from, the actual Starrcade. And what better way to do it and talk about two people I actually like. The Nature Boy, woo! Ric Flair, the then WCW NWA World Heavyweight Champion, aka the holder of the big gold belt. Also, he was called Mr. Starrcade, so yeah, we got Mr. Takeover, Mr. WrestleMania, Mr. SummerSlam, Mr. Royal Rumble, Mr. Takeover, like I said, and we have Mr. Starrcade, the Nature Boy, woo! So yeah, this is a match from 1988. Ric Flair and Lex Luger for the WCW NWA World Heavyweight Championship. So there was a lot of drama regarding this. I'll get to that at the end. But the storyline was that so heading into Starrcade was between Ric Flair and Lex Luger over the World Heavyweight Championship. In that same year, in March of 1987, Luger had joined the Four Horsemen. He was a Four Horsemen, which was led by Flair, and left until early 1988, when Luger felt like he was being held back, and then he left and became friends with Barry Windhelm in March. Then Windhelm turned on him and joined with the Four Horsemen, and sure enough, Luger then wanted to go ahead and basically try and destroy the Horsemen with taking out Ric Flair, and they faced in several title matches. One including at the Great American Bash, where the match was stopped due to Luger's excessive bleeding, even though he had him in the torture rack. Flair remained the champion, and it was decided that we're going to have a rematch of Starrcade. And this was the last of the Jim Crockett era promotion stuff, and because they couldn't compete with WWF at the time, and was on the verge of bankruptcy, Ted Turner bought the company, and this was the last of it. And sure enough, previous Starrcade events were held on Thanksgiving, but this event was moved into December to avoid direct competition with the WWF Survivor Series event. And yeah, and this would be the last traditional format until 1993. And the following four Starrcade events feature tournaments and the Battle Bowl Battle Royal. No one cares about that in my mind, but it's back then and that was a lot different. So Ric Flair and Lex Luger would have their match, and J.J. Dillon was on Ric Flair's side since he was also part of the Four Horsemen group as their spokesperson to an extent. And one rule they made for this match, something that's really forgotten nowadays, is that if Ric Flair disqualifies himself or gets in any way disqualified, he would lose the title. I miss that. Like, they always try and make it like it was an evil move. Like, the heels were trying to be cowardly and try and do it. But no, it made sense. Like, they added a stipulation back then that if you if you get disqualified, you drop the title. But now, it's always the heel tactic to try and get the face disqualified, even though I kind of missed that ruling. They even added the time limit thing. You know, back then, the wrestling matches would have time limits. The best you could go was 45 minutes at best, or an hour. But that still continues in New Japan Pro Wrestling with the hour-long limit, which adds an extra dose of tension and power to it in order to really drive up that this is only a limited time. They don't have an infinite amount of time. If they can't get this guy down within an hour, then they're screwed because they'll lose the match. They won't get a chance to be champion, and yeah, it's a must win for them. The stakes are raised for people. So yeah, Ric Flair and Lex Luger. This would be their last match together during the NWA era of WCW. This would be their last match in this feud. They would have more matches in the future, but yeah, for now, this would be their last match in the feud. And sure enough, a lot of people don't like Lex Luger, I think. Like, back then, when he was like the total package and everything, I was always curious to know, because part of me kind of likes the guy. Like, everything about him kind of looks awesome. So I wanted to look up more and see what classic matches has he been in, what great matches has he been a part of. I talked about his match with WCW's NWO Hulk Hogan, which was one of the rare times Hulk Hogan lost clean, even in the NWO days. Yeah. And then he dropped it less than a week later. Yeah. Why even do it then? So, yeah, this match would go on for nearly 31 minutes. It was just 1 second away from getting a 31-minute mark. And sure enough, they go ahead and do this whole stunt where Ric Flair is trying his damnedest to keep the belt without actually, getting in trouble with management. And they would just tear the house down. This match got a 4.5 rating from Dave Meltzer back then. I don't know what the rating would be now, but still. But here's the thing. Remember how I mentioned there were some things going on backstage behind it? Yeah, this was when Ted Turner was running WCW and all the chaos that happened before Eric Bischoff came in and burned it all to the ground with arrogance. But yeah, this was intended to be Flair versus Steamboat. I had to look this up, but the contract negotiations were delayed, and it wouldn't be until the Chi-Town Rumble show that they would do it. And at the time, the booker was Dusty Rhodes. Run by the American during Dusty Rhodes. And he had his own viewpoint of how the match and the event should go. And for what it sounds like that was just a terrible idea. Yeah, the original booking in this huge backstage issue that was going on between Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes was that Luger was going to get mugged by the Varsity Club before the show, with Rick Steiner making the save. Luger, being a face, would give his title shot to Rick Steiner, who would beat Flair within 5 minutes, becoming the NWA champion, Rick Steiner. Yeah, that almost happened. And Flair threatened to quit on that, and in a pretty much, when I was reading this from 411 Mania, they described it as a Cuban Missile Crisis moment. He was that close to signing with the WWF over the dispute before Jim Crockett stepped in and said, "You're fired, Dusty Rhodes," and you make Ric Flair the booker, whose first act was to put himself over Luger and bring in Steamboat. Yeah, here's the thing. They tore the house down. It wouldn't be Ricky Steamboat or Ric Flair legendary, but they tore the house down. But if you're going to book a show and you have the wrestler who's going to be in the main event to be the booker, it kind of goes without saying where this is going to end up at. And, yeah, but, yeah, here's the thing about this. Lex Luger was actually pretty awesome. Like, I really loved it. Ric Flair, that's going to be straight given on how he is in the ring. But Lex Luger really was pretty impressive in this match. Really enjoyed it. It was fun. I love the near fall attempts. And, yeah, here's the thing I looked up on. Remember how I mentioned he won the WCW title? Yeah, he won it the second time. Yep. He never won the NWA championship. Oh, he held this, but he never won it when it was the NWA championship. WCW would leave about a year or so later, and all this stuff happened. But yeah, he would never hold the NWA championship. And this was when everyone was thinking Lex Luger was finally going to get it. But yeah, WCW... Like, the NWA probably could have had worked with Luger. It really depends. I don't know how people were like back then. From what I'm hearing, it was kind of chaotic. Less so than it is now. But yeah, yeah, they go ahead and have this huge match. Part of me was on Luger's side, even though I knew what the end result was. I was actually invested in this match, even though I barely knew what the hell the story was. I had to look this up online in order to study and analyze it, and yeah, it was pretty good story. It would have actually been, back then a heel could actually win a main event match, even though everyone thinks the face is going to win. And I really love the crowd and the old school feel to it. Like, yeah, it's to be expected. I love the old school vibe I was getting out of it because it really was old school days. But yeah, I really did enjoy this match. It was fun. It was electric. I love the crowd going ahead and going all out and screaming at the top of their lungs. I really also loved the crowd spots when Ric Flair got a steel chair and managed to strike Luger's leg, and the crowd was trying to tell the referee, like, see, he used the chair! He used the chair! But, like, that's not part of the story. It really would have worked if they actually address that. Imagine if they did that back then. Crowds actually deciding the match to a minor extent if they were very passionately involved in the story. That would have been chaotic to an extent, quite greatly, especially nowadays since people like to demand a lot of stuff from WWE, so do I. And then when they finally get it, they get pissed off about it for some reason. Like the Roman Reigns stuff. Remember when Roman Reigns was cheered and everyone wanted him to be a top guy? They finally gave it to him, but they completely wrecked it up. They wanted Bray Wyatt to be the top guy. Nope, we're not going to give him the top position. They finally give him the top position, and then they take it away from him because everyone hates you. For some reason. But moving on from the now, let's go back to the past. So, yeah, like I said, this match was at the 30-minute mark, and Ric Flair would ultimately get the victory when Ric Flair... Here's the thing, he doesn't use any dirty tact... Well, he does do a dirty tactic at the end, but Ric Flair goes ahead and is almost going to be power slammed and put in the torture rack by Lex Luger, but then, due to all the attention he was getting in the leg, Ric Flair would ultimately inadvertently take advantage of it because Luger would collapse because of his leg being struck so many times. But it eventually would result in Ric Flair from falling on top of him and, of course, puts his feet on the ropes to get the pinfall and retain the title. And Ric Flair retains his title, Luger's mad, and Ric Flair vows that Luger would never ever get in a title shot with him ever again. And he was pretty much right on that. Like, they would have more matches and they would fight for a title eventually sometime from time to time in WCW. But what I mean, like, they would never get in a title shot again is because they would go ahead and focus on the Ricky Steamboat Ric Flair saga just a few months later in the new year of 1989. And that would lead to the greatest saga of matches we ever got from Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair. But yeah, I looked it up. Yeah, Lex Luger never would win the NWA title. Jim Ross was confident about he would get it. And that would be their last feud together. And the last time he would pretty much have a chance at becoming NWA champion. When he finally did win a world title, it was when WCW was fully independent from NWA. And this was when Ric Flair left. And fans were pissed off about that because it led to a dispute in their contract and Ric Flair taking the belt and going to WWF and calling himself the real world champion, but never really leading into it. You know, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, that match that was supposed to happen at WrestleMania, but they just didn't do it for some reason. But yeah, this match, really great. I loved how they managed to work with Luger's strengths and weaknesses. Because back then that had to be really important, and especially you had to get characters right. And I really did like Lex Luger. He was the total package. He could have been a long-term run of the company guy. He could have been a franchise player, but it never managed to get to that certain point. Like, you had all the internal politics going on, you had all the chaos going on, you had egos running amok, you had Hulk Hogan running around and acting like he owns the place because he pretty much did. But yeah, like I said, this match was enjoyable. I do kind of wish Luger would have held an NWA world title at one point because that kind of made me feel a little sorry for that. But I did enjoy this match, and I don't really watch a lot of Lex Luger matches. This is like my third or fourth. But I actually kind of like this one. This may be my top one right now. I'm going to watch more Lex Luger matches in the future, but if I was to choose his second, it would be him actually defeating Hulk Hogan clean in the ring. So, yeah. Those were my thoughts on Ric Flair versus Lex Luger at NWA WCW Starrcade 1988. This was Neo Reality Entertainment. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. Stay tuned for more, and I will see you next time with the Holy Grail.